So let's go ahead and create a Stripe account and add some Stripe API keys. So go to stripe.com and find the login button and just enter your dashboard. Once you're inside of your dashboard, so as you can see, I already have a project here. So perhaps your screen is a little bit different. So I want you to find this store icon in the upper left corner and go ahead and scroll the way down and click on new account, right? Or this will be your default screen if you don't have any account, I believe. And create this account. I'm going to call it LMS tutorial like that, and select your country of operation and just create an account. All right, so I'm just going to zoom out so we can see what we're working with here. So I'm just going to skip all of this and I'm going to click API keys for developers right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click reveal test key, this one, right? And I'm going to go ahead and copy it. So you can just click to copy. And let's go inside of our .environment file. And below the mux token, let's add stripe underscore API underscore key and paste it inside. Great. And I'm going to leave the Stripe in my other browser tab. And I suggest you do the same because we're going to have to create a webhook later on. So what I want to do now is go inside of my terminal and install Stripe. So npm install Stripe like this. And then you can run your app again and just refresh your localhost if you do that. I'm going to close everything and I'm going to go inside of the lib folder and create a new file, stripe.ts. I'm going to import Stripe from Stripe package, which we just installed, and I'm going to export const Stripe util, which is going to be new Stripe, and I'm going to pass in the key, which is process.environment. Well, it's exactly what you've written in your .environment file. So you can copy it from here and paste it here like that, and put an exclamation point at the end so it knows that it's here for sure. And let's go ahead and give it an API version. And you can just press on whatever it auto-completes for you, like that. And let's give it TypeScript option to be true. Great. So now we have our Stripe util. What we have to create now is the checkout route. So the checkout route is going to be the route which we trigger once we click on the enroll button right here. And that's going to be inside of our app folder, API, courses, individual course ID, and create a new folder, checkout. And inside, create a new file, route.ts. And now let's write export asynchronous function post, which is going to have a request, and it's going to have params. And the params is an object which has a course ID as a string. Let's open a try and catch block. So I'm going to resolve the error first, and I'm going to console log course ID checkout and an error. So it doesn't matter that this is a typo, right? This is just for us. And then return new next response from next/server internal error with a status of 500. Let's go inside of the try block. And first thing I want to do is fetch the entire user. So I'm going to use await current user from clerk/next.js. And now let's write if there is no user, or if there is no user ID, or if there is no user dot email addresses $0 dot email address. So we need at least one email address for the user. In any of those cases, we're going to return new next response unauthorized with a status of 401. Great. So let me just expand my screen here so I can zoom in. And now let's attempt to fetch the course we are trying to purchase. So const course await db.course.find unique. And I have to import db, so import db from add/libdb like that. And let's add where id is params.courseid and is published is true, so we can only purchase published courses. Now let's check if we already have purchased this course. So const purchase await db.purchase.find unique where user ID underscore course ID matches. So user ID is user.id and course ID is params.courseid. Great. And now we're going to write, so I'm just going to scroll down here. If we have a purchase, return new next response already purchased with a status of 400. If we don't, but if we don't have a course, return new next response not found with a status of 404. Great. And now let's define the line items for the Stripe checkout page. So const line underscore items is a type of Stripe. So import that from the Stripe package. Like this, I'm going to move it to the top. So Stripe from Stripe, and go ahead and write Stripe dot checkout dot session create params dot line item and add an array. And in our case, it's going to be an array, but it's only going to hold one item inside. So quantity is going to be 1, price data is going to have a currency of US dollars. Product data is going to have a name, which is course.title. Description, which is course.description. And we can put an exclamation point because we know that if it's published, it needs to have a description. And the unit amount, which is going to be math.round course.price times 100. Great. And now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's create the Stripe customer. So let Stripe customer await db.stripe customer.find unique where user ID is user.id, and let's select Stripe customer ID to be true. Excellent. And now let's check if we don't have a Stripe customer. So that's completely fine if we don't. So if we don't have a Stripe customer, we're just going to create a new one. So this is someone purchasing for the first time. So let's write const customer await Stripe, but this time from add/lib/Stripe, right? So make sure you have this imported, Stripe from add/lib/Stripe. And then down here, what you're going to do is you're going to write stripe.customers.create email user.email addresses 0.email address. And now let's define the Stripe customer in our database. So Stripe customer await db.stripe customer.create data user ID to be user.id, and Stripe customer ID is going to be customer.id. Great. And now we can go outside of this if clause and we can write const session to be await stripe.checkout.sessions.create customer is Stripe customer.stripe customer ID. We add the line items, which is a constant we created right here above, line items. So we can just pass it like this. Mode is going to be payment. Success URL is going to be open backticks process.environment.next_public_app_URL /courses/individual course ID / and it's just going to write success equals 1 like this. So this is the entire line. And you can duplicate this line for the cancel URL. And this is going to say canceled to be 1 like that. And metadata. This is extremely important. So don't forget the metadata. Metadata is going to be an object where we add a course ID to be course.id and user ID to be user.id. And now let's quickly go inside of inside of environment file and add this process environment variable. So below this, add that, and I'm just going to write HTTP //localhost 3000. So just like this, no slash at the end. Perfect. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and return next response.json URL session.url. So let me explain why is it so important that we have this metadata. Well, what are we actually doing when we call this route? we are not creating a purchase here. We are creating a customer, but we don't know when the payment will succeed, right? Because they have to do in real world. So users have to authenticate with their bank that they're doing an online purchase, right? So we don't exactly know when that's going to happen. So the reason we are adding the metadata is that when the purchase goes through, so when the user authorizes it, the Stripe is going to throw us back a webhook using this metadata. And then using that metadata in the webhook, we are going to know what payment just went through, right? Using that metadata, we're going to know, oh, okay, so this what I just received in my webhook is this user purchasing this course. So that's why this metadata is so important. Excellent. And now what I want to do is I want to set up my Stripe CLI webhook, right? So let's go inside of developers right here. And let me just zoom out so you can see where this is, right? So inside of your Stripe right here. So let me just try and see what you're going to see. You have to find the developers button basically. And once you're in the developers button, go ahead and find webhooks. And in here, you're going to click test in a local environment. First thing you're going to have to do is download the CLI to set up Stripe. So just click on this link if you don't have the CLI. They have instructions for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. Once you have the Stripe CLI, you're going to be able to type Stripe in your terminal. So this is not going to work unless you click on download the CLI and set it up. And now let's follow these steps. So first thing we have to do is do the Stripe login. So I'm going to open my terminal here and I'm going to open a new one. So keep your app running. I'm going to write Stripe login. And as you can see, I have the URL here, which I can either click on or I can press enter. And that is going to open that URL inside of my browser. And as you can see here, I have a pairing code polite-beauty-1-valor. And I just have to confirm that it's the same one here. So it's me who is trying to connect to my Stripe dashboard. If it's you, if the code matches, just go ahead and click allow access. Great. And now you're inside and connected. And now, right here, you should see the completed button for this first step. The second thing we have to do, and now you have your webhook signing secret. So import the database UDL like that. Let's export a synchronous function post, which is going to have a request, which is a type of request. Let's get the body. So const body is await request.text. Let's get the signature. Const signature is headers.get stripe-signature as string, lowercase string. Great. Now let's define the event, which is a type of stripe.event. And now let's open a try block where we're going to attempt to construct the event using the signature. So event is stripe.webhooks .construct event. Let's pass in the body. Let's pass in the signature. And let's pass in process.environment.stripe_webhook_secret. So double check that you have this in your environment file, right? You need to have Stripe webhook secret, and you can just paste it here like that and put an exclamation point at the end. Excellent. And in the catch block, let's get the error, which is a type of any, and let's return new next response. And I'm just going to use backticks here to write webhook error. Otherwise, we don't know what we just received in this webhook, right? This webhook works asynchronously, out of our control, right? It's just, at one point, it's just going to get received to us. So that's why we need to have the user ID and the course ID. If we don't have it, we have to return new next response, and we have to pass in another webhook error missing metadata with a status of 400. Otherwise, if we have those two, we can finally create our purchase. So await db.purchase.create data course ID, which is course ID, user ID, which is user ID, and that's it. And in here, you can write else, return new next response, webhook error, unhandled event type. And let's log that type, so event.type. And one important thing, give it a status of 200, right? So you have to be very cautious in the Stripe webhook when passing 400 status errors. If your webhook has too many 400 status errors, Stripe is going to turn off that webhook because it's obviously not working as intended. So that's why we are not going to throw 400 just because of an unhandled event type, right? So we're going to log this for ourselves so we know that we are receiving some events which we don't want, but it doesn't matter. We don't handle them, and that's not technically an error for the webhook. We don't have to break the webhook. So we're going to pass 200 for it instead of 400. Great. And then at the end, because of that very same reason, we're also going to add return new next response null with a status of 200. Excellent. So we completed our webhook route. So now we're going to go back inside of our course enroll button. So let's find it inside of the app folder, course, chapter ID, components, course enroll button here. And let's go ahead and let's add const is loading and set is loading from use state. So import that from React. I'm just going to move it right here. And now let's write const onClick to be an async arrow function, which is going to have a try and catch block. In the catch block, let's use the toast from React Hot Toast. So I'm also going to move that here. So it's going to have toast.error, something went wrong. In the finally, we're going to have set is loading to false. Set is loading, is it this one? Cannot find name, why? Oh, async, like that. Okay, I misspelled async. And in try block, set is loading is going to become true. And in here, we're going to get the response for the checkout. So const response is equal to await Axios from Axios. So make sure you add this import as well. Axios.post backticks /API/courses /individual course ID /checkout. And then we're going to do window.location.assign response.data.url. And then let's add that on click here. And let's disable the button if we are loading. Excellent. And now you can click done here, and you're going to have to refresh this page. So just make sure you refresh that and keep your terminal running where you have your Stripe CLI. So in here, you're going to see all the logs, successful and failed. So you're going to know what's going on with your webhook. So let's try and purchase this course right now. So I'm going to click enroll, and let's see if that's going to work. I should get redirected to the Stripe checkout page, and there we go. As you can see, I'm redirected back here, and now I have to fill in this information. So you can use this credit card to trigger a success from Stripe, right? So this is a dummy credit card which just goes 4242, 4242, 4242, and 4242. And for the rest, it doesn't matter, right? So it's just dummy numbers, and you can put whatever you want here. Just for this one, make sure that's in the future, right? And if you do a different credit card, this is not going to work, right? So make sure that you have the correct credit card. And now let's finally click pay. And I forgot to do something. So we have 401s inside of my terminal here. As you can see, it's still locked, right? So we made a mistake in the development. I forgot something. So all of my events yield 401, which means unauthorized. What I forgot to do was go inside of my middleware, and I forgot to add the webhook inside of public routes. So let's go and add public routes, an array API/webhook. Great. And now Stripe can safely access our webhook. And you might be wondering, well, isn't it dangerous that our /API/webhook is now not secured by authentication? Well, take a look and visit the webhook route. So our webhook route is very much secured using the Stripe signature and using our process environment. So we have to construct the event. If we fail doing that, we throw an error. right? So you don't have to worry about it. It needs to be publicly accessible for Stripe to work. And let's try this one more time. So I'm going to go and prepare my terminal here so I can see if I'm having errors or success. Let's go ahead and click enroll one more time. In the checkout, use the working 42424242 credit card. Enter some fake information here and click pay. And let's see if you're gonna get, and there we go, everything is green, 200, 200, 200 right here. And now, as you can see, I can see my attachments here. I can go ahead and visit the next chapter. So this is the next chapter description. There we go. Amazing, amazing job. So you just completely finished the Stripe checkout. So in order to test Stripe checkout, just remember you have to have your local CLI running here. When we deploy, we're gonna add that to Stripe configuration. But locally, we have to test it right here because Stripe doesn't have access to localhost, right? This is not a public domain. This is just on our local environment. So that's why we have to use a local Stripe CLI to simulate a webhook. So if you're gonna like take a rest now and shut down your application, just remember when you start working on this again, you have to run your application using Stripe listen forward to localhost 3000/API/webhook. Or if you're gonna wrap up with the tutorial, just don't shut down the Stripe CLI. Perfect. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna go ahead and create the button which I wrote to do, which is going to change the progress of this course, right? We can mark it as complete, and we're gonna modify the video player to also mark it as complete if we reach the end of the video. And what's left to do is also on the last video add some confetti, and we are getting closer and closer to finishing the entire app. Great, great job. So now that we have purchased this course, let's revisit our our course sidebar here, and let's add the progress we've made in this course. Since we've purchased it, we can finally calculate the progress of how many chapters we've completed. So I'm gonna go ahead and close everything. And I'm gonna go and find the course sidebar, which is inside of the app folder, course, components, and right here we should have the course sidebar. So go ahead and open that one. And as you can see here, I left a comment, check purchase and add progress. So as you can see here, I have the purchase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this to be a conditional. If we have a purchase, in that case, we're going to render a div with the class name, margin top 10, and we're going to render the course progress component. If we save, we're going to get an error because we don't have that component. But let's already pass in the variant success and value progress count. So this is going to be a reusable component because we're also going to use it inside of our course card. So let's create this component, and we're going to do that in our global components folder because as I just said, it's going to be reusable. So course-progress.tsx. Great. And let's go ahead and export const course progress component. And let's return a div course progress. Let's go back inside of the course sidebar, and we can now import it from as/components/course-progress. So I'm going to move it with the database here. All right. And if you refresh in the sidebar now, you should see the text course progress. We're going to turn that into an actual component now. So let's first give it an interface. Interface course progress props, which is going to have a value, which is a number, a variant, which is going to be either default or success. And we're also going to give it an optional size, which is either going to be default or small. All right. Now let's go ahead and append those props here. So course progress props. Let's write a value, variant, and a size. Great. And now let's create some constants here. Actually, we can do that outside, right? So const color by variant is going to be an object. If it's default, it's going to be text-sky-700. If it's success, it's going to be text-emerald-700. You can copy and paste this entire constant and change this one to size by variant. And this one on default is going to be text-small, but on small is going to be text-extra small. And let's just fix this typo to success with 2 C's, like that. Perfect. Now let's go inside and let's modify this to have the progress component, which I forgot to add. So we have to go inside of the terminal, like that, npx chatcn-ui at latest add progress. So that's the component we're going to add. It's called progress. Install the package. And after it's installed, npm run dev your app again and just refresh your localhost. Now inside, we're going to add the progress component from /UI progress, like that. So just make sure you imported the progress, and I'm just going to change this to /components UI progress like this. And let's give it a class name of h-2. Let's give it a value of value like that. And already you should see a progress bar right here. So it's very light, so it's not visible yet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go inside of the progress component, and I'm going to add it some variants. So let's go inside of the UI folder. So instead of components UI, progress.tsx right here. Right now it doesn't have any variants. So we're going to extend this chatcn component to use some variants, right? So const progress variants is going to be CVA from class variants authority. Let's move it to the top, and let's also import type variant props from it. All right. So it's going to be CVA, and it's going to accept h-full, w-full, flex-1, bg-primary, and transition-all. Open an object, type variants, and type variant inside. Default one is going to be bg-sky-600. Success is going to be bg-emerald-700. And give it default variants, variant default, like that. Perfect. And now let's use this progress variant inside of the progress primitive indicator right here. So instead of this class name, we can now remove that, because if you look, it's exactly the same as the one we defined here. So we're going to preserve these styles, but we're going to combine it with cn, and then we're going to add the progress variants. And inside, we're going to go ahead and pass in the variant. Now we don't have the variant right here yet, so let's go ahead and modify this progress props here. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to define new props here. So let's write export interface progress props is going to be extends react.html attributes HTML div element, and let's add a comma here, and let's write variant props type of progress variants, and an empty object at the end. And now let's write a type combined progress props, like that, to be progress props. This is supposed to be progress props, my apologies. So this interface is progress props. So combine progress props and react.component props without the ref, like that. So let me just zoom out so you can see it, which is going to have a type of progress primitive.root with capital R, like this. So if you think you've messed this up or you can't get the result, you can always just copy it from my source code and copy the entire UI progress.tsx. Great. And now we have to add this instead of this one right here. So just delete this one, and instead just add the combined progress props, right? And now after the value, also extract the variant. And there we go. We now have no more errors inside. And let's go back to the course sidebar now, to course progress, and let's pass in the variant now, because we can, and variant as well. There we go. Perfect. So now that we have that, let's go below the progress and let's add a paragraph, which is going to render math.round value percent, outside of it, percent complete. And let's give it a class name of cn. So just make sure to import cn from add/libutils. All right. So the value here, default value is going to be font-medium, empty-2, text-sky-700. And then we're going to write color by variant, variant or default, and copy that and give it size by variant. And it's going to be size or default, like this. Great. And now we have finished our course progress component. As you can see, now it says 0% complete right here. Perfect. So what I want to do now is I want to also add that to the course card. So let's go ahead and exit this. And in the browse right now, I think it's the price. There we go. So we have to do progress component. Perfect. So all we have to do is go inside of the course card. So that is inside of our global components, I believe. Components, we have it right here, course card. And here where we have to do, let's remove the div and let's render the course progress from /course progress. So make sure you imported that, and I'm going to change that to add/components. So we have the course progress. Let's give it a size of small, a value of progress, and let's give it a variant to be dynamic. So if progress is 100% complete, in that case, it's going to be success. Otherwise, it's going to be default. And there we go. Now you can see that it no longer price displayed here. Instead, it says 0% complete. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's create a little button here, which is going to trigger completing a specific chapter. So let's go back inside of our chapter ID page. So I'm going to close everything here. Let's go inside of the app folder, course ID, chapters, chapter ID, page.tsx right here. And in here, you can see that I have a conditional here. So we had the course enroll button, and now I'm going to remove this div. And instead, I'm going to render course progress button. And let's pass in the chapter ID to be params.chapter_id. Let's pass in the course ID, params.course ID. Let's pass in the next chapter ID to be next chapter, !ID. And is completed is going to be a boolean of user progress !is completed. And now we have to create is completed, like that. And now we have to create the course progress button. So that's going to be inside of these components where the course enroll button is. So course-progress-button.tsx, like that. So let me just expand so you can see course-progress-button. All right. Let's mark it as use client. Let's export const course progress button, like that, and return a div saying course progress button. Go back to page.tsx, and you can now import this button from /_course progress button the same way we did with the enroll button. And there we go. You can see now I have a text here, course progress button. So now let's finally add the interface for it so we can style it into a proper button. Interface course progress button props are going to have a chapter ID, which is a string, a course ID, which is also a string, is completed, which is an optional boolean, and next chapter ID, which is an optional string. So we might not have next chapter if we reach the end of the course, right? Now let's extract all of those props here. So course progress button props, chapter, course ID is completed, and next chapter ID. And instead of chapter, it should be chapter ID in the props, and same thing here, right? So I forgot that. And there we go. Now in this page where we render the course progress button, we no longer have any TypeScript errors here. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's style this button. So instead of div, it's going to be a button element from add/components UI button, like that. and it's going to say if it is completed, it's going to say not completed, because it's going to indicate an action, right? So we do the reverse. If it's completed, the action is going to be not completed. So the user knows, okay, I have to click on this, and then it's not going to be completed. Otherwise, it's going to be mark as complete. Great. And below that, let's render our dynamic icon. So for that, we have to define const icon is completed, question mark, X circle from Lucid React, otherwise check circle from Lucid React. So make sure you add those two, and I'm just going to separate these two imports. And then we can render that icon here, like that. It's a self-closing tag, and give it a class name of h-4, w-4, and ml-2, and give this button a type of button, and give it a variant is completed, outline, otherwise is going to be success, which we don't have yet. So what we have to do is we have to go inside of the button, and we have to add the success variant. So let's go inside of button. So that's inside of our UI folder. So components UI button, the same thing we just did with the progress a while ago. And this one is going to be much simpler. So I'm just going to go inside of this big button variants. I'm going to find the last one, which is a link, and I'm going to add success. And I'm going to write bg-emerald-600 text-white hover bg-emerald 600/80, like that. And there we go. Now you can see how it's greenish color because we added the success, and it works right here because it's not completed. So it uses the success variant, which we just added right here. So it's just as easy as that. We added a new variant to the button. All right. And now what we have to do is give it some class names. So class name w-full on MD is going to be w-auto. So this is what it looks like on mobile. And on desktop, if you expand, there we go. It's a nice little button on the side here. So what I want to do now is I want to actually indicate an API call when we do this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create some states, and I'm going to add some hooks here. So first, let's do const router to be use router from next/navigation. So make sure you add this import. All right. Below that, const confetti use confetti store, and we import that from add/hooks use confetti store. Below that, go ahead and add const is loading and set is loading from use state. So make sure you add use state and default to false. So let me just add import use state from React, like that. All right, and now let's write const on click to be an asynchronous function where we're going to try and catch. In the catch one, we're going to call toast from React hot toast. We're going to call toast.error. Something went wrong. In the finally block, we're going to set is loading to false. In the try block, we're going to set is loading to true. And now we're going to do like conditional changes here. So await Axios from Axios. Make sure you add that import. Axios is going to call .put /API/courses /individual course ID /chapters /individual chapter ID /progress. And it's going to send the body of is completed to be the opposite of what we currently have. So it's going to be like a toggle button, right? And then if it's not completed and if there is no next chapter ID, this means that we have reached the end of the course. So once user clicks this, all the chapters are going to be marked as complete because this is the last one. So in that case, we can do confetti.open. Sorry, on open, like that. And let's also go ahead and let's write if it's not completed. And if we do have next chapter ID, in that case, we are not firing the confetti, But what we are doing is router.push /courses, individual course ID /chapters, and next chapter ID, like that. And then at the end, let's do toast.success, progress updated, and router.refresh. Great. And now, if you go ahead and try and do this, you're going to get an error because that one doesn't exist. Let me just refresh this. And let's see, have we actually added this on click? We haven't. Oh, so let's go ahead and copy this on click and add it to the button on click. And let's disable the button if we are loading. So the same thing we did with the enroll button, right? And now let's try and click mark as complete. And we're going to get an error because we don't have that API route. So let's go ahead and create it. So we have to revisit our API folder. Right here, I'm going to collapse everything. So I'm going to go inside of the app folder, API, courses, course ID, chapters, chapter ID, and alongside publish and unpublish, I'm going to create a new folder called progress. And inside, I'm going to create a route.ts. And I'm going to write export asynchronous function put, which has a request of type of request and has params. Params are an object which hold the course ID, which is a string, but also the chapter ID, which is also a string. Let's open our good old try and catch block here. Let's console log whatever is useful for us locally. So in my case, it's going to be chapter ID, progress, and an error, so I know what's going on. And let's return new next response from next/server, internal error, something, whoops, status 500. Like that. So make sure you added the next response import. In here, as always, we get the user ID from the out, like that. If we don't have the user ID, we can return new next response, unauthorized, with a status of 401. And while we are here, let's also extract is completed from await request.json. Let's go ahead and let's import the database. So db from /libdb. And now below this, let's write const user progress is await db.user progress. And we're going to use upsert. So it's either going to create it for the first time or it's going to update it. So .upsert where user ID, chapter ID matches the combination of user ID and chapter ID from params.chapter ID. Oops, chapter ID. And we're going to pass in update is completed. But if it's our first time creating, we have to pass in the create option. So we're going to create it using the user ID, chapter ID, which is params.chapter ID, and is completed like that. So now we handled both cases. If this is the first time we are creating the user progress, or if we are updating it. Perfect. Exactly what we need for this use case. And return next response .json user progress. Excellent. And let's try it out now. So I'm going to refresh this. And I'm going to click mark as complete. And let's see if that's going to work. It says progress updated, and there we go. We are redirected to the next one. It says 25% complete, and you can see if I click back, I have a nice little icon. I have a banner saying that I've already completed this chapter, and I can toggle it as uncompleted. So I can click again, and there we go. Now my progress is back at 0. So I just want to mark this as complete. So I can also confirm that in the browse page, it's also 25%, and it is. Perfect. So exactly what we wanted. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm also going to enable the video player to complete the chapter if it reaches the end. So let's revisit the video player component. So I'm going to close everything here. And video player component is inside app folder, courses, course ID, chapters, chapter ID _ components right here, video player. And as you can see, on ended function is empty. So we're going to go ahead and create it now. So besides this state, I'm also going to add a router from user router which I think we already have imported here. Yes, we do. Great. And we also have the use confetti store imported, so we can add that as well. So const confetti use confetti store. Excellent. And now let's write const on end to be an asynchronous function which has a try and catch. In the catch, it calls toast.error. Something went wrong. So make sure you have toast imported from React Hot Toast. In the finally block, actually we don't have a finally block in this one. We don't need it, right? Yeah, because nothing is loading per se. Yeah, perfect. So that's it for the catch. And now let's go if complete on end. So if we have that condition set from our props inside of the video player, only then we are going to complete this, mark this as completed when it reaches the end. So await Axios.put. Make sure you have Axios imported from your project. /API /courses /course ID /chapters /individual chapter ID /progress. Like that. And pass in is completed to be always true. So we don't have to toggle it, right? Because if it's not true, we're not going to enable, there is no way that the video can toggle it, right? The button makes sense because click once, it's completed, click another time and you mark it as uncompleted. But for finishing the video, it doesn't make sense. If it reaches the end, it's completed, right? It cannot toggle to uncompleted. So that's why we always know that we want it to be completed in this case. Great. And now, if there is no next chapter ID, we have to throw the confetti because we finished the entire course. So confetti.onOpen. Like that. And let's write toast.success, progress updated. Let's do router.refresh. And lastly, let's check if we do have next chapter ID. In that case, what we're going to do is router.push /courses /individual course ID /chapters and /next chapter ID. So just make sure you added the router here, and it seems like we did all of that correctly. So let's attempt to do this now. So first I'm going to try it in this one, which is already completed. When it reaches the end, what it should do is redirect to the next video. So I'm going to refresh and try again, just in case it wasn't saved. So let me go, I'm going to move it to the end here. And once it reaches the end, it should redirect me to the next one. And it seems like it's not exactly doing that. So let's first check if it even works for submitting, right? So I'm gonna, oh yeah, I know why it doesn't work, because we forgot to pass in the on-end, the same thing I forgot in the button. Okay, so on-ended and pass in the on-end function. My apologies, I completely forgot about it. So now let's try it again. Just for good luck, I'm gonna refresh. I'm gonna go ahead and visit the end of the video. And what it should do is just redirect me to the next chapter. And it seems to still not be doing that. Then again, let's go ahead and check if the completion of it works. Like this. There we go. So it does. Progress update. Oh yeah, only then it will redirect, right? So it's not gonna redirect if we already finished the course, right? It assumes that we're coming back to watch it purposely, right? But for the cases where it's first time completing, it's gonna redirect. And for the next one, what should happen is when I click mark as complete, since I finished all of this, the confetti should be thrown. Let's see, and there we go. We have a nice little confetti. Amazing, amazing job. So now if I go back in the browse page, I should also get 100% here. Amazing, amazing job. You finished the entire course preview right here. You have everything you need. And what we have to do now is we have to create the student dashboard. And one more thing we have to create is the individual teacher analytics to see how much each course has generated. Amazing, amazing job.